I mean, the very initial immediate idea of the character, the vampire, um, came from me wearing a chador and riding a skateboard. I had a chador that one of my aunts had brought from Iran, and I jumped on a skateboard, and the chador caught the wind and kind of spread open like a bird or a stingray, and it was a thrilling kind of feeling, and I felt like a character, and sort of just came to me, this vampire. I love so many scenes. I mean, it would be an obvious thing to kind of say this, the 4-minute white lies moment of the film, because that was one of those euphoric, romantic, joyful things that is even better than you had hoped on the day when the actors are doing it, when she walks up behind him.
When the sun is drowned in a deathly sea, I can feel my heart beating as I speed from the sense of time catching up with me. The sky set out like a pathway, but who decides which route we take? As people drift into a dream world.
The little boy, Milad, I think that scene is just one of those establishing moments for character, for you to really understand some deeper kind of moral ethos inside of her, and what makes her tick, and maybe how she's choosing who she's watching, and how she's cataloging human behavior. And I think the movie is certainly looking at what right and wrong is, and really it's all a lot of murky gray areas in between. And just the idea that she watches a child, a little boy, and is kind of threatening him as a warning that she'll be policing him to turn out to be good, which ultimately, I don't think that that's necessarily going to work, because I don't think that human nature gives a shit about being policed. I think your moral decisions have to come from inside of you rather than from external forces, in a pure kind of altruistic way. But she's trying. She's trying to instill the fear, instill the fear of the devil in this child. I'm a vampire lover. My first love with vampires came from Anne Rice, and reading as a preteen, reading all of the Vampire Chronicles. I very much fell in love with Lestat, and that type of vampire, which is a more, I think, intellectual, romantic, sexy kind of vampire. I think there can be many, different incantations of vampires. You have scary, sharp, razor-toothed vampires, and I think Nosferatu falls into that. And it's chilling, Nosferatu's presence. And then you can have this kind of other side, which is this sexy, tortured kind of soul, and many in between. You look at films like Let the Right One In, or Catherine Bigelow's first film. It's like so many people, so many great filmmakers have had fun with vampires. The world of the film isn't reality for reality. It's a true fairy tale, and so Once these characters are alive in my mind, once this world is alive in my mind, it's a universe that exists. As it is with a movie, it's like the minute you have the idea, you just want to bring it to life. And making the movie was one part of it, and then having all those stories. And of course, I love graphic novels. I've grown up a fan of graphic novels, and it felt obvious to do a graphic novel. Also, an animated series was in my mind. Just how can I keep her going? I wanted to see her more. I felt people would tell me like they wanted to know who she was before and what was going to happen after they drove off together. And so it just kind of naturally came. We did the first one as a sort of, companion piece to the film. It came out around the time the film was coming to Sundance, and then we kind of went forward from there and started to go back in time. Basically, the prostitute Ati and the pimp, who is a really wonderful character, and whose backstory is really surprising and not what you would think. So, and it's like you want to see, he dies so quickly in the film, and you want to he's kind of like, you want to, he's like the tiger in the room. It's like there's something about getting to understand what made him into this animal that he is. So those two characters play heavily in what's coming up. Right before she came to Bad City, she spent decades in the desert. I'll just explain to you the timeline of what came right before the desert. What came right before the desert was 1970 and the beginning of the revolution in Iran. And my feeling was that she was there basically as civil unrest is happening and people are in the streets killing, savagely being killed by the government, and it's this chaos happening. She kind of got sucked into a blood rage and just started killing without rhyme or reason amidst all the killing, and kind of had a massive bender, like a binge, like a weekend in Vegas of killing, until she was just, at a point where she kind of hit that Nicolas Cage Leaving Las Vegas, and she couldn't take it anymore and she wanted to die. So she just started walking out into the middle of nowhere desert, got to the desert and was like, okay, now I'm just going to let the sun take me. And then every night, every morning, she would just dig a hole and go under. So it's that will, that little spark of not wanting to die, but not really understanding why or for what purpose she should live. I think people definitely got curious and intrigued by the girl, wanting to know more about her. I think you get a sense of the things she loves and collects just in the time span of the movie, her interest in collecting music from some of the people she kills. It's a really interesting way to form a record collection. In her room, there is a wonderful selection of posters that, I really spent a lot of time thinking about who would be the posters in her room and kind of what that would tell you about how long she's been around and lived. In her bedroom, there's a poster, the iconic Madonna poster, which I had to replace the faces of. So Madonna's face was replaced by Margaret Atwood, who graciously offered to be Madonna in the movie poster. We have a Bee Gees poster, and the faces of the Bee Gees were replaced by Elijah Wood and his producing partners. There is a poster of Elvis Presley, and that was replaced by one of our movie producers. And then Michael Jackson Thriller is also up there, and that was my face.
Watching the world so small below.
in the comic, it just allows an opportunity for her to go and experience and and visit parts of history, and we get to go through that in her eyes, and that's what I am most excited about doing with the comic, is to continue her story, take you back to the beginning, show you how she became a vampire, and then I guess how she came of age, you know, in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, moving along through those moments of history.